Nutrition is one of the most polarizing and confusing topics on the internet. So if you are overwhelmed by all the information you're seeing online, this video will help you because I'm going to break down all of the latest scientific literature which explains how different diets affect testosterone production, which is something that every man should be focused on. Two studies that I use to inform this video are reviews. And what a review is the researchers take all of the smaller individual studies in a field on a given topic and they summarize all of the findings into one mega study, which is what the review is. So I took the two reviews on how diet affects men's sexual health and how different types of diets affect steroid hormone concentrations, which is what testosterone is. It's a steroid hormone. So these are the two most comprehensive reviews on the internet about how diet affects testosterone production. Now, the diets that these reviews went over are intermittent fasting, also known as time restricted eating, the Mediterranean diet, the keto diet, low carb, carnivore, low fat, vegan, paleo, and then the Western diet. So you've probably heard many of these diets in different spaces on the internet. So we're going to cover all of them in this video. The first diet is the Western diet, and this is going to go in the D tier. The Western diet you can think of as the typical American diet. So think burgers, pizza, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dunkin' Donuts. The researchers described it as any diet that's rich in processed meats, high fat dairy products. So think milk and cheese, refined grains. That's going to be breads and processed carbs like donuts, artificial sweets, candy, salt. You get an idea. And a minimal intake of fruits, vegetables, fish, and whole grains. So pretty unhealthy here. The researchers found that adherence to a Western diet has been associated with increased risk of overall mortality in multiple diseases. Now, this doesn't specifically mention testosterone here, but one thing you need to know about testosterone is it's a reflection of a man's overall health. And if there is a diet or an eating pattern that increases risk of mortality, which is death, it increases your chances of dying by eating this way. That means it's bad for your overall health. And anything that's bad for your overall health is bad for your testosterone production. They did go a little bit more specific with sexual health and found that a Western diet is associated with lower semen quality. Now, again, that's not exactly testosterone, but one of testosterone's functions is sperm production. So if we have a diet that's lowering sperm production, then we can infer that that diet is bad for testosterone production because the male reproductive system functions as an integrated whole. You can't really separate testosterone and sperm production. So that's a key indicator there as well. Some of the reasons why the Western diet is problematic for men's reproductive health and testosterone is because it has an imbalance in fats. So let me break this down for you. If you've ever heard of the omega-3 fats, these healthy fats, they need to be in balance with omega-6. These are called polyunsaturated fats, and they need to be in the right balance. If you have too much of one or the other, it leads to systemic inflammation in the body. And that's just a fancy term for the body being under stressed because there's an imbalance. Now, our Western diet uses something called seed oils, which you might have heard before, in a lot of our food products. If you read the packaging labels on chips or any packaged food, or if you go to any fast food and you see the oil that they're frying things in, these are cheap, low quality seed oils, and they have a really high concentration of omega-6 fats. So research shows that most Americans have a significant severe imbalance in omega-6 to omega-3s. This leads to what's called oxidative stress, which is just a fancy word for internal internal stress in the body, which leads to inflammation. So why is inflammation bad? Well, inflammation leads to damage to all internal organs, and it's associated with heart disease, brain disease, liver disease, and everything else. And like we said before, anything that's bad for your overall health is bad for your testosterone levels. So since this diet has this imbalance in omega 6s to omega 3s, which leads to inflammation, this indirectly reduces testosterone production. The second reason why the Western diet is problematic for testosterone is all the grains and refined carbs and sugar. So you can see in this picture, everything we eat in America seems to be packaged between two pieces of bread. Every sandwich, every burger, every hot dog, every piece of pizza, fries, we eat a lot of processed carbs. And the problem with this is processed carbs spike your blood sugar levels. When your blood sugar levels spike, your pancreas releases a hormone called insulin. Insulin takes sugar from your bloodstream and brings it into the tissues in your body. When insulin is in your bloodstream, it essentially blocks out testosterone. So, what this means is by eating a lot of refined sugars, and grains and breads, just processed carbs, or it's all really the same thing. Most Americans have high blood sugar, they have high insulin levels, and since insulin blocks out testosterone, this leads to lower testosterone. Not to mention that eating this way leads to diabetes and a whole host of other health problems. The third major problem with the Western diet is it contains a lot of full fat dairy. So think in America, we put milk in our cereal, we drink a glass of milk with dinner, and we put low quality cheese on everything. It's on pizza, we put cheese on our burgers, and dairy products are made from lactating female cows. And there's some evidence to suggest that the hormones from the lactating female cows, since they're fat soluble, get stored in the dairy products. So when we consume these dairy products, we are ingesting hormones from lactating female cows. There was one study that showed that replacing butter with olive oil in the diet increased testosterone because there was less dairy. There's a lot of other theories about dairy. Some people say that since humans didn't evolve eating dairy, our caveman ancestors, they weren't drinking milk. It's not something we evolved to eat. So then it's bad for our bodies and then bad for our testosterone. There's a lot of different theories about it. But eating too much saturated fat, as you can see right here, highlighted by the study. By the way, saturated fat is the type of fat that's in dairy. Eating too much of that was inversely related to sperm count. And again, sperm count is a parallel metric to testosterone. All this to say, the Western diet, the way that most Americans eat, is severely problematic for testosterone production, so it gets placed in the D category. The next diet that gets placed in the D category is a plant-based diet. And I call it plant-based because you have vegan, vegetarian, there's a lot of different derivatives here. Vegetarians had significantly lower testosterone levels than non-vegetarians. Lifelong vegetarians had significantly lower sperm concentrations compared with non-vegetarians. Again, anything related to the reproductive system is related to testosterone. So the fact that lifelong vegetarians have lower sperm count is a sign that they have lower testosterone. Some reasons why the plant-based diet will be problematic for testosterone. Number one is there's no animal fats. And animal fats contain all of the fat soluble vitamins that our bodies need to produce testosterone. They can't be stored in plants. Another reason is because the plant-based diet has very little saturated fat. Now, I might sound like I'm contradicting myself because we just said that too much saturated fat is problematic for our health, but you do need a little bit because saturated fat gets converted into cholesterol inside the body. You might have heard that cholesterol is bad for you, but in moderation, it's not. And the testosterone molecule is an analog of cholesterol. It's made from the exact same structural backbone. So if you have zero saturated fat in your diet, which is usually the case on vegan diets, because saturated fats can only be found in animals, generally speaking, your body is literally lacking the raw materials, the building blocks it needs to create testosterone. The last reason why the plant-based diet might be adverse for testosterone, or why it is because it's too high in plant defense chemicals. So plants, especially raw vegetables, naturally contain low levels of defense toxins called oxalates. And the reason why plants evolved this was to discourage herbivores from overeating plants. So if an animal ate way too much of a plant, it might feel kind of sick because of these defense chemicals. And from an evolutionary standpoint, this would allow the plants to stay alive because they're not all getting eaten. Don't get me wrong, we need to eat some vegetables, and our bodies can tolerate a certain amount of these plant defense chemicals because humans evolved eating them. However, if the majority of your diet is vegetables that contain defense chemicals, your body is going to have more defense chemicals in it than it should. And when your body's constantly fighting against defense chemicals, it's going to lower your overall health, and that's going to negatively affect your testosterone. So that's my theories as to why the plant-based diet might not be the best. And actually, there's one more quick thing, which is that the plant-based diet still allows for processed foods. So technically speaking, fries are vegetarian. Donuts are technically vegetarian because there's no meat. So you can still eat junk food on a plant-based diet, which means it doesn't really have any incentive to encourage you to actually eat healthy. The next diet that's in the D category is the low-fat diet. And the low-fat diet, you eat, I think, over 50 or 60 something percent of your calories from carbs. And the whole low-fat diet fad started back in the 1960s when they thought that fat leads to heart disease. But this was later proven not to be true. But our food pyramid today still recommends that people eat 45 to 65% of their calories from carbs. But this is not ideal, as we can see based on the research. The decrease in fat intake, according to these guidelines, was directly correlated with a secular decline in testosterone levels, meaning a population decline in testosterone levels. And the researchers hypothesized sort of what I was talking about before with too much carbs and insulin. Glucose loading has been found to reduce total and free testosterone levels, potentially due to changes in insulin resistance. So basically, if most of your diet is composed of carbs, your body's going to become insulin resistant, and that's been shown to reduce total testosterone. So avoid the low-fat diet. You don't want to be eating most of your calories from carbs. The carnivore diet gets placed in the C tier. A lot of people say the carnivore diet increases testosterone, but the studies show it does not. Now, I want to be clear. The scientists that researched the carnivore diet didn't specifically call it the carnivore diet. They called it a high protein diet. And similar to the low fat diet, on a high protein diet, over 50% of the calories, or over like 47% of the calories consumed, come from protein. And as you can see, they described it as the carnivore diet. That's what they call it in colloquial terms. And the research shows clearly that high protein diets, excessively high protein, caused a large decrease in resting total testosterone. So when you eat over 3.5 grams of protein per kilogram, so that's over 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight, which is a lot. It can cause hyperammonemia or hyper, I don't even know how to pronounce that word, but I'm going to describe why eating too much protein lowers testosterone. Protein is made from amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. When our bodies consume and break down protein, it creates a slightly acidic environment because these are amino acids. And normally our bodies can deal with this because we have mechanisms for buffering the increased acidity. Buffering means canceling out the acidity. However, that can only go so far. So if we eat too much protein and we have too much acidity in our body, that leads to increased inflammation and oxidative stress. You can see that here. And we spoke about this before with the seed oils imbalance, the omega 3 to omega 6, right? This leads to inflammation and oxidative stress, and so does an environment in our body that's too acidic, which can be caused from eating too much protein. And as they say here, studies show an inverse relationship between testosterone and inflammatory markers. Any hormonal effort to upregulate the urea cycle would involve an increase in cortisol. I'm going to talk about that next. So basically, sort of going off on a tangent here, I'm going to come back to center and make this very tactical for you. Eating too much protein makes the inside of your body too acidic. When the inside of your body is too acidic, this increases inflammation and stress, and inflammation and stress in your body negatively affects testosterone production, which is a big reason why the carnivore diet led to a large decrease in testosterone in men. Now, what was I going to speak about next? Please forgive me. I'm new to YouTube and I'm working on gathering my thoughts and being coherent. So I appreciate you cooperating with me and continuing to listen as I work everything out here. Another reason why, and this is my hypothesis here. This isn't what the research talked about, but another reason why potentially the carnivore diet is not ideal for testosterone is because there's no plant-based micronutrients. So I'm going to jump back. We said the plant-based diet was problematic because it had no animal-based nutrients. Well, on the opposite end of that extreme, the carnivore diet has no plant-based nutrients. And there are certain plant-based nutrients that are extremely important for testosterone production, including magnesium and boron. These are mostly only found in plants. So if you're only eating meat and you are not eating any plants at all that contain these micronutrients that are really important in the pathways that produce testosterone, it makes sense why it wouldn't be optimized eating the carnivore diet. The carnivore diet also includes no fiber. Fiber is the component of plants that essentially makes it crunchy, and there's no fiber in meat. When we consume fiber in our bodies, it's actually not digested by our stomach acidity, it's fermented by our gut bacteria. So if you didn't know, our guts inside of our stomachs are colonized by billions and billions of little bacteria. And when we eat fiber, we're essentially feeding those bacteria, which is actually a good thing. Most people think of bacteria as bad, but these bacteria in our guts play a lot of important functions in our bodies. They're associated with our mental health, with really everything. If you've never heard of the gut microbiome, I highly recommend you look into it. It's fascinating. So where am I going with this? The gut bacteria that keep us healthy inside of our gut need to eat fiber. Fiber is their food. The carnivore diet has zero fiber because meat does not contain fiber. So what happens on the carnivore diet is your gut microbiome dies off. And without that gut microbiome, your overall health is going to suffer. And the main theme of this video is your overall health is directly tied to your testosterone. So if the carnivore diet doesn't allow you to give your gut the fiber it needs, and that's lowering your health, that's another reason why. Lastly, the carnivore diet still allows for processed meats. So just like we mentioned how technically fries and donuts are acceptable in a plant-based or vegetarian diet because there's no meat, technically cheap deli meat and burger meat that we see in the Western diet that's unhealthy for us, that's allowed on the carnivore diet. So it doesn't explicitly ban certain foods that are unhealthy for you. Next up is the keto diet, and this is also going to go in the C tier category. On the keto diet, you only eat fats. So The carnivore diet, you basically only eat protein and fat. The keto diet, you only eat fat and you eat zero carbs. The research shows that even compared to a Western diet, the keto diet led to a significant decrease in testosterone levels. Now, there is some research that shows that the keto diet increases testosterone if you do your own and you look this up. And this can be a bit confusing, but what the researchers really emphasized was the only reason why there was that effect is because the keto diet caused men to lose weight. And it was actually the weight loss that improved testosterone levels, not the keto diet itself. So if the weight loss factor is removed, the keto diet actually has a negative effect on testosterone because the body needs carbs. So I'm gonna try to explain this the best as I can here. The researchers, as you can see here by my mouse, hypothesized the role of ketone bodies in testosterone metabolism. They said that ketone bodies influence testosterone levels by increasing testosterone metabolism. Could be one possible mechanism explaining lower testosterone levels on the ketogenic diet. So, what you need to understand is that when your body only consumes fats and has no carbs, it creates something called ketone bodies, which is an alternative source of energy aside from carbs. What the researchers are saying is the presence of these ketone bodies increases testosterone metabolism. Testosterone metabolism is the process by which testosterone is broken down and excreted in the body. So the body produces testosterone, it's used by the cells, and then it's broken down and excreted. They're saying that ketones, which are part of the keto diet, increase the speed at which testosterone is broken down and excreted, which would mean there's less circulating testosterone. So, why might this be? Well, ketones, from an evolutionary standpoint, were usually produced when human beings were starving because human beings did evolve eating carbs. So, when a human being, or a caveman, you can think, had no carbs, that was a sign that, hey, I'm in a deprived state. I'm not eating very much. And when a human's in a deprived state, this increases stress. The keto diet puts your body under stress because human beings are meant to eat carbs, and this stress lowers testosterone. I'm going to keep it simple and stick with that. The next C tier diet is intermittent fasting. If you've never heard of intermittent fasting, it's also called time restricted eating. And on this diet, you only eat within a certain window. So some people only have 8 hours a day that they're allowed to eat, maybe 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And there's some people who take it to the extreme and they only eat once per day. So once every 24 hours. This is called OMAD, or one meal a day. Now, intermittent fasting also decreased testosterone, and it was for a similar reason as the keto diet. The decrease in testosterone in men following a ketogenic diet, as well as testosterone levels, or as well as lower testosterone in intermittent fasting. So that's where I got this from. They found lower testosterone in intermittent fasting. And again, the problem with this is when you go a very long time without food, your body thinks it's starving because it's imagining itself as a caveman on the savannah. I'm not eating food. I'm starving. This increases stress. And when an organism is stressed, testosterone levels go down because dealing with the stressor is a higher priority than producing testosterone. So don't get me wrong, keto and intermittent fasting do have their own health benefits, especially when it's related to insulin resistance and other things, and they can be great for fat loss. But we're talking about testosterone optimization here, and they're not the best for that. Next up is the low carb diet, and this goes in the B tier category. The researchers said that after 3 months of adhering to a low carb diet, testosterone levels increased significantly. So that kind of speaks for itself. And that kind of raises the question, why might the low carb diet be better for testosterone? Since it's not no carb like keto, which is too far to the extreme of not having enough carbs, low carbs is good because you have just enough carbs to fuel exercise and everything that your body needs, because your body does need carbs to function optimally, but you're not having so many carbs as is seen on the Western diet or the low carb, high fat diet, or sorry, the low fat, high carb diet, where your insulin levels are chronically elevated. So, simply put, the low carb diet gives your body just enough carbs to not be in a state of stress. However, it limits carbs, which keeps your insulin down, which is good for testosterone. So, low carb is going in the B tier. The researchers mentioned that post exercise cortisol was lower after short, intense exercise on the low carb diet versus the high carb diet, which is really interesting because short, intense exercise like sprinting and lifting weights, this is what you need to be doing to increase your testosterone. But after every time you exercise, your body releases the stress hormone cortisol, which I should have mentioned. The stress hormone cortisol blocks out testosterone. So by reducing cortisol after exercise, which is what the low carb diet does, it allows testosterone to flow freely, which is another reason why the low carb diet gets put in the B tier category. Now, the first contender for the A tier category is the Mediterranean diet. The researchers found that men who adhere to the Mediterranean diet experience lower sperm DNA fragmentation and increased testosterone levels. They say the current literature suggests the Mediterranean diet improves erectile dysfunction and lessens the deterioration of erectile function in the long term. So basically, it keeps your erection qualities high throughout your entire life. So it reduces uh, DNA damage in your sperm. It increases your testosterone levels. It improves your erection quality. And they also found that it improves semen parameters. Increased risk of or increased chances of conceiving is associated with the Mediterranean diet. So it's going to help you have the ability to have kids. And then they mentioned that the Western diet is considered a risk factor for male fertility. So the Mediterranean diet improves male reproductive health on three fronts: improving sperm quality, increasing testosterone, and erection quality. And this makes a lot of sense because the Mediterranean diet has a high amount of omega-3 fatty acids. And I'm going to I'm going to take a quick second to describe the Mediterranean diet because I failed to do so after I grab one more quick sip of water because this video is getting a little bit long. Okay, the Mediterranean diet involves eating mostly seafood, fruits, vegetables, and a little bit of red meat and dairy. This is how people in Greece, Italy, the Mediterranean region eat. And the Mediterranean diet is well known for reducing processed foods, which is another major health benefit of it. Um, so, yeah, I guess to describe the Mediterranean diet, it would be a lot of seafood, a lot of lean meat like chicken, a little bit of red meat, a lot of eggs, and then a whole bunch of different fruits, vegetables, etc. So, this diet is excellent for testosterone production. Now, the second A tier diet is the paleo diet. Now, the researchers didn't specifically look into how the paleo diet. Okay. Again, I forgot to explain what the paleo diet is. Forgive me. The paleo diet involves eating like a caveman. So, all you're allowed to eat is single ingredient whole foods that a caveman would have had access to in the wild. So, that's going to be meats like game meats, red meat, chicken, eggs, seafood, whole fruits and vegetables. So, just, not applesauce, but whole apples, not, candied mangoes, just mangoes. You want to, on the paleo diet, you only eat whole single ingredient foods. The paleo diet, what makes it so special is it explicitly bans all modern processed foods. So paleo, the term paleo refers to Paleolithic, which is a time in history thousands of years ago when human beings did our evolving. But this all came before the Industrial Revolution when all these modern processed foods came out. So the paleo diet strictly tells you to eat like a caveman and you're only eating all natural foods. So although the researchers didn't specifically look into how this affects testosterone, it's been shown that the paleo diet reduces all cause mortality. It basically means that it reduces your risk of dying. It reduces risk of heart disease, metabolic syndrome, which is basically obesity, and a couple different types of cancer. They said, like the Mediterranean diet, the health benefits of the paleo diet are clear. So, since the paleo diet is so good for your overall health, and since it explicitly bans all the processed foods that cause all the health conditions that lower testosterone, the paleo diet gets put in the A tier category. And that's what the researchers said. Another distinction, this is in their words, another distinction between Paleolithic nutrition and other diets, like low carb diets, is that may contribute to its health benefits is that it exclusively comprises non-processed foods. So again, the low carb diet is great, but technically on a low carb diet, you can still eat processed foods that are low carb. The paleo diet is the only diet that says you cannot eat any food that was not created before the Paleolithic era, which was even before the agricultural revolution. So the paleo diet also excludes dairy. You're not allowed to eat dairy and you're not allowed to eat grains. So no bread and no grains. And both, or sorry, no dairy and no bread. And both bread and dairy have been shown to have negative effects on our overall health in excess. I would say that the last major benefit of the paleo diet is it's balanced. So, unlike the carnivore diet and the vegan diet, it includes plants and animals and all of the unique nutrients that are only found in plant and animal sources. But it also doesn't tell you to only eat a limited amount of carbs, fats, or protein. All the nutrients are evenly distributed, so you're not going to be lacking in any one macronutrient like the keto diet, like the carnivore diet, like a low fat diet. And when you're lacking in any nutrient, that puts your body under stress. And when your body's under stress, it reduces testosterone. So the paleo diet gives your body everything that it needs to function well from all types of plants, animals, carbs, fats, protein. It lets your body have everything that it needs. It's non restrictive. The only thing that it restricts is processed foods that have been proven to be bad for our health. That's why the paleo diet is in the A tier. When it comes to nutrition and testosterone optimization, there's three things that matter most. Number one, like I've been talking about, is minimizing processed foods. And like I just said, the paleo diet is king because it's the only diet that explicitly bans all junk food, all fast food, all fried food, everything else that's unhealthy for you, everything else that's known for a fact to be unhealthy for you. The Mediterranean diet technically allows for processed food. It's the definitions are kind of arbitrary, but it's known to be heavily restrictive of all processed foods. But the main issue with carnivore, keto, low carb, every other diet is they still allow for processed foods. On the carnivore diet, you can eat processed meats like hot dogs and burgers and all that other junk. On the keto diet, you can technically eat, they have keto chips and you can technically eat keto ice cream and all this other unhealthy stuff. Low carb, low fat, they don't say what the food quality should be. They just say reduce carbs or reduce fats, which doesn't really do much if the food quality is poor, if you're eating junk food. Same thing with plant-based, vegan, vegetarian diets. You're still allowed to eat processed carbs on those diets. So too with intermittent fasting. You can not eat for 24 hours, and then when you do eat, if you eat a big pile of pizza and burgers, it kind of defeats the purpose. And then at the bottom of the totem pole is the Western diet, the typical American diet that most people eat, which is based mostly on eating processed foods, which is why it was in the D tier. So What matters most for testosterone optimization is minimizing your intake of processed foods. The second most important thing is balance and completeness. The Paleo and Mediterranean diets both include plants and animals, so your body's not going to be deprived of any vitamins or minerals that can only be found in plants or only found in animals. And they also include a balance of carbs, fats, and proteins, which you need to prevent your body from being deprived. Your body needs carbs, fats, and proteins for different functions. And if you cut out any one of them too much, it puts your body in a state of stress, which is bad for testosterone. Carnivore completely cuts out carbs, has way too much protein, like we talked about, and it lacks all the plant-based nutrients. That puts your body under stress. It's an imbalanced diet. Keto says no carbs at all. Your body needs carbs to function optimally. That's an imbalanced diet. The plant-based diet cuts out all meat, which it doesn't give it enough, doesn't give your body enough protein or animal-based nutrients. The plant-based diet is nutritionally incomplete as well. And the Western diet, the typical American diet, doesn't have much of any fresh fruits or vegetables, so it's lacking all the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that your body needs. So all these diets are nutritionally incomplete, unlike Paleo and Mediterranean. So I'm going to contradict myself again, because what matters most, part 3, is calorie restriction and fat loss when it comes to testosterone. Body fat, fat that's stored on our bodies, contains an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase takes testosterone and converts it into estrogen. So, what this means is the more body fat you have, the more estrogen you have. So, if you are a man and your body fat is above 15, 20, 30%, if you are overweight or obese, losing body fat is the single most important thing you can do to increase your testosterone levels, bar none. If any of these diets that I just talked about allows you to do that, then losing body fat is more important than whatever specific deficiencies are caused by the diet. For example, if you eat the carnivore diet, it's really hard to eat a lot of meat because it fills you up and it's just a lot of meat. It's hard to eat that much meat. This causes you to consume less calories overall. When you consume less calories, you lose more body fat. And like we just established, the lower your body fat, the higher your testosterone levels are. So even though the carnivore diet lacks plant-based nutrients, which are important for testosterone production, and even though it puts your body in an acidic state, which puts it under stress and is bad for testosterone, both of those negatives of the carnivore diet will be nullified if it helps you consume less calories and burn more body fat, because that's the most powerful needle mover for increasing testosterone. That said, if you're a man and you already have a healthy body fat percentage, if your body fat is below 15 or so percent, then the carnivore diet will have a negative effect because you no longer benefit from the benefits of having lower body fat percentage. Another example of this, the vegan diet. The vegan diet is hard to eat a lot of calories because there's just so much fiber and plant-based matter. It's hard to eat a lot of calories on the vegan diet. So if you're overweight or obese and you eat the vegan diet and that causes you to lose fat by eating less calories, that will increase your testosterone levels, even though the vegan diet is lacking a lot of meat-based nutrients, which your body needs for testosterone. So the point I'm making, redundantly on purpose, is if you are obese, losing body fat is the number one most important thing for increasing your testosterone levels. And if any of these diets get you there, then the fact that they're nutritionally incomplete or imbalanced doesn't matter as much as losing body fat. Ideally, you would follow a diet like a paleo diet or a Mediterranean diet, which will help you lose fat as well, but they're also nutritionally complete. However, if for whatever reason any of these other diets does help you lose body fat, do that. So putting all this together, the best diet for testosterone optimization is going to be a hybrid of the Paleo and the Mediterranean diet. And this is exactly how you need to eat. Number one, eliminate all processed foods. No fast food, no fried food, no junk food, no candy, no chips, no soda, no processed foods. Number two, only eat single ingredient whole foods. That's going to be meats like chicken, steak, pork, red meat. Only eat non-processed meats in their natural form. So when you go to the grocery store or the butcher, just buy the steak or just buy the chicken. Don't buy hot dogs, don't buy deli meat, no processed meat, just single ingredient meats. So too with fruits and vegetables. You want to buy plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables in their whole state. So don't buy mango slices that are dried and sweetened. That's processed. Just buy a whole mango. Don't buy veggie straws. That's processed. Just buy the whole vegetables. Don't buy applesauce. That's processed. Just buy the apples. This is exactly how our caveman ancestors used to eat. They would just go out into the wilderness, they would pluck an apple off a tree, or they would kill an animal and eat the meat just like that. So, by eating in a way that humans evolved to eat, you're mimicking exactly the way that our DNA evolved when it comes to nutrition. You want to try to get your food locally because when food has to be shipped across the country, it usually needs to be packaged or processed in some way to keep it preserved. So when you buy local food, not only is it more fresh, it preserves the nutrients, you're probably buying from a farm that doesn't use pesticides. And without going down another tangent, pesticides have a lot of chemicals in them that lower testosterone. So you want to buy if you can, buy your meats, your fruits, your vegetables, your produce, buy it locally because it'll be fresh, it won't be stored, which can kind of break down some of the nutrients, and it's probably not treated with pesticides. You want to talk to the farmer about that, but local, small, regenerative farms usually do not use pesticides. At the grocery store, when you're buying your eggs and your poultry, you want to make sure it's pasture raised because this allows the chickens to forage out in the fields and the grasses and eat the foods that chickens are meant to eat. And the healthier the animal that you eat, the higher quality the meat and the eggs are, and the higher quality the meat and the eggs are, the healthier you are. The same concept applies for red meat and ruminant animals. This is going to be like your ground beef. You want it to be grass fed, and I'm not sure if pasture raised is a category for that, but you want your red meat to be organic and grass fed because you know for a fact that the cows were eating grass and not grains. Grass is what cows are meant to eat. And just like how humans are healthy when we eat what we're meant to eat, when cows eat what they're meant to eat, they're going to be healthier. When the cow is healthier, their meat is higher quality. And when you eat higher quality meat, it makes you healthier. So too with seafood. You want your seafood to be wild caught because farm raised seafood is really nasty. They feed the fish grains that fish are not meant to eat, and they're also treated with pesticides and antibiotics. You want your fish to be wild caught. You should keep your seafood intake somewhat limited and do your research on this, but there are certain types of seafood that have higher levels of mercury and lead and other things, unfortunately, because us humans are just devastating our planet. We talked about organic produce. You want to get a high intake of omega-3s and monounsaturated fats. That's what's on the Mediterranean diet. So monounsaturated fats, think olives, olive oil, avocados, nuts. These are really healthy fats that help your body thrive and produce testosterone. You want to moderate your saturated fat intake. So saturated fat, you'll get plenty of that if you just eat a little bit of red meat throughout the week. I would recommend minimizing dairy. If you're going to eat dairy, just have some low-fat yogurt or low-fat cottage cheese, but don't be drinking a lot of milk and using a lot of cheese on things. Humans did not evolve eating dairy. It's a great source of protein, and there are some specific health benefits of dairy. It's a great source of calcium, and I think it increases IGF-1, which is an anabolic hormone that helps build muscle. But again, you don't want to be eating too much dairy, especially with the research on what they found with replacing butter with olive oil led to increased testosterone. Keep dairy minimum and keep it low fat, because in the fat in dairy is where the cow's lactating estrogens are stored. You want to go lower carb because it's been shown that low carb diets are better for testosterone. But the paleo and Mediterranean diets are sort of naturally low carb. If you only eat fruits and vegetables as your main sources of carbs, you're not going to be eating very much carbs, because those aren't highly concentrated sources of carbs. And I guess the last point to mention is you want to try to minimize plastic packaging in your food. So this is hard to avoid because most food is packaged in plastic. But one of the benefits of the whole foods diet is your foods tend not to be packaged in plastic. So for example, if you eat baby carrots, which are all chopped up, those are stored in plastic packaging. Whereas if you just grab a big bundle of fresh carrots off of the grocery store counter or go to a farmer, those aren't coming in contact with plastics. And I should mention, microplastic accumulation has been found in 100% of male testicles in a bunch of research that they've done. And these microplastics disrupt a bunch of different pathways in your testicles, including those related to testosterone. So by eating a whole foods paleo style diet, less of your food is packaged in plastic, and the less plastic exposure, the better. I guess another example of this is when you go to the grocery store and you're buying your apples, don't put them in those plastic bags. Just keep the apples fresh in the cart the way that they are. So that video was a doozy, but that is all of the diets that were covered in this research and their effects on testosterone production. I'm going to leave links to those studies in the description below if you want to check them out for yourself. Another thing you'll find in the description is a link to my men's testosterone coaching program called the Testosterone Transformation Academy. This is where we coach guys who are struggling with low testosterone and use interventions like training, nutrition, like we just talked about, and we optimize everything in men's lives, every single detail, to maximize their testosterone production, to help with this epidemic of low testosterone that we're seeing. Testosterone levels are at an all-time low. So I started this coaching program to teach things like this to men, to help them increase their testosterone levels and sort of fight back against what's happening in society. So if you struggle with low testosterone, maybe you have low libido, erectile dysfunction, you can't build muscle, you can't lose fat, or if you're depressed or anxious, these mental aspects of testosterone are important to point out as well. If you struggle with any of these signs or symptoms of low testosterone, check out that link, watch the video that describes the program, and you can apply to see if you'd be a good fit, to see if this program would help you out. So that's all I have for today. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you in the next one.